All right, readers, how's it going? Today we are going to really dive and focus in on retelling a story. Now, what that looks like, and you can see on my big screen here, is I'm thinking about the setting, the characters, the beginning, the middle, and then all the way at the bottom, thinking about the end of my story. Now, in order to do this successfully, as I'm giving my retell, you're gonna really see how I use the story. In this case, how I use my where the Wild Things Are story in order to give my retell. A lot of readers get tricked. They think that when they're giving a retell and they think when they're going through each of these boxes that they have to remember every single thing from the top of their head. It's not true. When you're giving a retell, and the best retells and the best readers know that they go back into the story. Now, this is a story that I like to use because it's a story that I know really well. But even though I know this story, in order to fill in all these boxes, the setting, the characters, beginning, middle, end, you're going to see that I'm going back in and I'm really using the pictures and I'm using a bit of the words to help me in my retell. One of the things that I want you to take notice of, I added a couple of notes for myself. When I'm thinking about the setting, I'm thinking where and when the story takes place. When I'm thinking about the characters, obviously I want to focus on my main character, but I also want to make sure I'm thinking about those supporting characters. It's not every single character. A supporting character is another important character that's not the main character. Then I'm thinking about the beginning, the middle, and end. And as I start to give my retell, you're going to see how I kind of focus in on some different important elements of the middle and end there. All right, let's get into my retell. So, where the wild things are. I already know from this story and going into it that this story is a little bit tricky because this story, the beginning, the setting that it has, and the most important setting where the story and when the story takes place, it actually changes. Now, when I'm jotting down the setting of my story, I'm going to focus on the part of the story where it takes the most time and like the story happens the most of, and I'm going to think about the most important setting. Even though the story begins with Max at home, as I go through, I know that's not where the story ends up taking place. That's not the most important setting for my main character, Max. So I'm going to jot that down. The setting is at the land of the wild things. Now, I'm not really sure if that's what it's called, but if I had to make my own guess, that's what I think it would be called, the land of the wild things, because that's where the wild things live. My main character, of course, is Max. My supporting characters, now there are a couple of different characters, but not every single one of them is important. Of course, Max's mom is important. The wild things. Let me go through and let me double check. Ooh, there's also Max's dog, but Max's dog doesn't really have any lines. He doesn't really come up in the story a lot. I don't think Max's dog is that important of a character, so I don't think I'm going to add him in there. I think Max being my main character, his mom, and the wild things, I think those are enough supporting characters. All right, now I'm ready for the really tricky part, my beginning, my middle, and end. Now, I jotted a couple notes down, like I said before. For my beginning, this is where I really introduce the setting and I reintroduce the characters. Even though I've jotted them down before, while I'm giving my beginning and I'm writing or I'm telling another listener, I want to make sure that I'm stating the setting and characters because that's going to help my listener and it also helps to introduce my story. So, as I'm thinking and I'm looking through, I want you to notice that I'm really going back in and I'm rereading parts of the story and I'm really taking my time and refreshing my memory about all the big things that happened. So far, I saw that Max was doing some kind of naughty things. He gets in trouble from mom and he gets sent to his room. And all of a sudden, a forest grows in his room and he starts to set sail to the land of the wild things. All right, let me jot those things down. In the beginning, of course, making sure that I'm starting with my sentence starter. In the beginning, Max is causing trouble. Now, it doesn't say exactly those words, but I can kind of make up my own words. It doesn't need to be exactly what's in the story. It can come from my own words and come from my own brain. All right, in the beginning, Max is causing trouble. He gets sent to his room. Suddenly, his room becomes a forest. He sets sail to the land of the wild things. It really is a long introduction, but it's a pretty long story, and it also tells you all the important things that have happened so far. Now I'm ready for my middle section, and that's where I really start to talk to you and tell you about the problem. Now, the problem in the story is a little bit tricky because it happens much, much later in the story. So that means I have to skip over some other parts that aren't so important. Here I can kind of see how Max is mesmerizing those wild things. They start to fall in love with him. They say that he should be their king, and he graciously accepts, and they have their wild rumpus. Notice all of these things I'm kind of glossing and skipping over them. They're not so important for my retell. They're good to know, but they're not important enough for me to have to write down. They don't really tell me about the middle of the problem part. Here on this important page, and I'm going to zoom in for you a little bit. Here I can refresh my memory and I can really see how a problem starts. Make sure I'm using the correct sentence starter. In the middle, Max starts to get sad because he misses his mother at home. Again, that's not exactly what the words say. When I go back into the story, it says that Max starts to miss and wants someone to love him. But from my own brain, and I can make an inference and use my own words, that's what I kind of thought of myself. Not just that he wants someone to love him, but it made me think, you know what? He wants his mom, and he probably misses his mom and wants his mom to love him. As a good reader, I'm allowed to add in my own thoughts, and I should definitely be doing this in my retells, and I could definitely be doing this in that middle section when I'm thinking about the problem. Now that I have the beginning, I have the middle, I can go all the way down to the end. Now, the end, I think, is pretty simple because that's how I'm talking about the solution. How is that problem solved? Lots of readers get tricked by this part. They start to tell how the book ends, but they don't always mention the solution. How does that problem get solved? Your ending should always, always include that. If you told your reader about the problem, you got to tell them how that problem is solved. This one is pretty simple. In the end, Max returns home. He sails back on his ship. Now, I can add a little bit more in there about how when he gets home, his dinner is still there and it's still warm. But again, that part isn't as important because it doesn't really talk to me about how the solution or how a problem is solved. When I'm thinking about the beginning, middle, end, I want to make sure a couple things. I want to make sure that I'm telling the events in the right order. That's part of why we have the beginning, middle, end. And when I'm thinking about these middle boxes, that problem and solution, I want to really make sure I'm thinking about the most important problem in the story. And I want to make sure I'm telling you how that problem is solved. This takes a lot of reading. You should be reading your stories more than once. And as you're writing, you want to make sure you're using those sentence starters in the beginning, in the middle, in the end. As long as you're doing those things, you're going to be successful. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with, and I can't wait to see some of your reading and your dictating. It means you're writing things down. I know it's been kind of tricky with the computers, but so far, all the work I've been seeing is looking really great. I'm really excited, guys. I can't wait to check you out.